Okay, I guess we'll get going. So thank you so much for joining the 2023 Virtual Summit powered by Preseem. So this session, it's Ask Us Anything. We have never done this before. This is your chance to grill us on whatever you want. We have no idea how many questions are going to come. We've got a few pre-canned one if need be, but we're just going to try and have fun with this one. So first, quick intro. My name's Gerrit Nagelhout. I'm all three of us are founders of Preseem, but I'm the CEO. As a CEO, I wear quite a few hats like finance and HR and all that stuff, building the team, of course. But from a customer perspective, I try to spend a lot of time with our customers. I lead sales, customer success. I'm pretty hands-on still. I really get a lot of satisfaction and enjoyment out of talking to our customers. I learn a lot. Gives me a chance to help them, use Preseem in different ways they might not have thought about before. I spend, quite a few hours every week doing that still. Maybe Dan, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Dan, CPO. So my background, I've worked with internet providers pretty much my whole career, from owning a small one a long time ago, and then working at one, doing some fixed wireless way back in the day, DSL, bit of fiber, and then worked at a company actually where the three of us met, building products for the giant tier ones for some time, and now Preseem. So focused on product, both the engineering side and kind of roadmap and what we're going to build and what problems we're going to solve.
All right, Scott.
Yes, Scot Loach, CTO. I've spent most of my career working for network equipment providers, various types and various engineering related roles. And eight or so years ago, started up Preseem with the other guys here. And most of my job is managing people and responsible for implementing Preseem, different parts of Preseem, and making sure we're doing that in the best way possible.
Yeah, I can't believe this is our 6th year doing this now.
Yes. Time flies.
Time sure flies.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So maybe, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was going to say, just encourage everyone. The chat, we didn't kind of do the logistics. On the side there's a chat box. Any questions you have, product, whatever it is, just drop them in there and we'll just go through them as we otherwise talk about everything else we're covering.
Yeah. So maybe I'll kick us off here. So Dan, this is initially your idea. So maybe I'll focus this question in your direction. Why did we create Preseem?
So there's a few different threads to pull on there. So the one, I guess, is we spent a lot of time with tier ones. We kind of decided we did not want to do tier ones again because it's a very, very different thing. Honestly, not nearly as much fun as working with smaller providers and not necessarily small, but just not the tier ones. So it was very interesting to do something in that space again with kind of local and regional providers. Some of the initial experimentation and stuff that led that path came from trying to optimize, home internet connection and seeing all those kind of things and seeing the benefits that can come out of that. And then really, I guess maybe the thing that was even right before that in terms of the product was seeing that there was a better way to understand the network quality and trying to take a slightly different approach to that than what we'd seen in the past. And then, after that, we layered on the traffic management and those little pieces afterwards. So, wanting to help local and regional providers again, that's kind of where my career started. And then seeing some cool technologies and new ways of doing things that we thought would have a lot of value and be drastically simpler than some of the other approaches that were being taken to try to make internet quality better at the time. So.
Yeah, I remember in the early days in 2017, there was a day, I don't know if you remember the story, Dan, you probably do, where I was working from home, you were at the office, you were just starting to play with FQCODL and active queue management and that kind of thing. They were slacking back and forth, and the rest of the team was working in the office, all behind a shared internet connection. And Dan was gleefully telling me how he was lowering the plan speed that the whole office was getting, 20 meg, 10 meg, 9, 8. And he's like, nobody's complaining yet. And I think he went as low as I don't know if it was 1 meg or something for the whole office.
Yeah.
It was pretty low and there was still not a peep from anybody.
Yeah, and that's kind of just evidence of how much it matters to have some isolation and have good latency, and people don't often feel throughput.
Yeah, and that's how I knew that we were onto something, and to try and see this thing through. I think, Dan, you made the comment as well about the local and regional ISPs, and for me, I'll give you an anecdote that happened just last night. Why I personally find it such a big deal and so much fun. I got a call around dinner time, my cell phone last night. I checked the phone, which I always do, and I recognized the number, so I answered it. Went to my office, and it was one of our very first customers. Went probably in a top in the first 10 or so, and based in Manitoba in Canada. And we've worked with them for years. Of course, they were happy users for a long time and everything else. And they recently sold their business, and we helped them through the transition into the new company, the acquirer, and everything else, and did what we could. And but he wanted to call me to first of all thank me for all the service we've provided all this year, and I said I appreciate that you sold to another local and regional ISP and not one of the big ones, which happens a lot, especially in Canada. And he's like, I would never, ever, and he used much more colorful language than that, which I'm not going to repeat here, but I would never sell to one of the big ones because I live in this town. These people care about the experience on the internet. If I would have sold to one of the big ones, my name would have become dirt in this town. So I did not want to do that. And he also said, look, I did everything I could to introduce you to the new team. I got a lot of value out of Preseem over the years. And I really wanted to make sure you had a chance to work with the, much larger company that acquired us as well. And you know, that's one of the reasons I do it. It's just so much fun, and it just through such good things for all those local communities.
And the WISPA, even WISPA shows are just more fun than most trade shows too. Like there's just a lot of interesting, good people, and that's a lot nicer than maybe dealing with procurement departments at tier 1 providers, where it's a very different relationship.
Or even going to the big shows where you're there in a bunch of suit and ties, and people are walking around mostly collecting swag.
Yeah, especially the big telco shows like in Europe and stuff, where everyone's wearing a suit, just feel very very strange. Yeah,
I haven't worn a tie in a little while.
Cool.
Yeah.
So there's one question there from Brett. I think I'll read it out, but Brett, I might need you to expand a little bit because I'm not quite sure I know exactly what you're asking. Maybe some of the other guys do. But the question is, do you have a way of managing customer experience that does not involve a per user monthly tax, which our customers don't want and would disadvantage us in the marketplace and will run afoul of government price controls if we get public money? I'm not sure if that's referring to dollars as in or capacity in terms of that tax.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I thought it was probably the monthly subscription, Dan, that he was referring to.
Oh, you're referring to our
pricing model.
Oh, that was
our
my pricing model.
I could be wrong.
That could be fair. Yeah, I mean the commercial model that we've chosen is based on recurring, like per subscriber. We like. I mean, obviously, everyone would like to not have pay for anything. I mean, in some kind of perfect world, right? But the reason that we like that is it gives us the ability to invest in the long term versus what it's kind of just like a one-shot thing. And we don't really do any long-term contracts because we want to continue to kind of earn that business on an ongoing basis. So from that standpoint, it gives us the consistency, I guess, to continue to invest and continue to try to make things better over and over as much as we can. I'm not sure what else we can say about that. It is. I understand that not everybody wants to have recurring, but ultimately, actually, the one thing I could say to that is our costs are substantially driven by the cloud side because we do a lot of data analysis. So unlike, and this is pretty fundamental, unlike something like just a traffic management box that you drop in your network and it just manages packets, we have a very significant recurring cloud bill, like in the many, many, many tens of thousands of dollars. So we cannot offer the data analysis and stuff that we do without kind of having matching recurring revenue to our recurring costs. The strict shaping side, that could be different if that was sliced out.
Yeah, I'm a little the public money thing. I'm not quite sure why that would be a constraint. It's something I probably don't understand quite right. I've never heard a scenario where somebody had some money, where it's RDOF or CAF, and maybe there's different ones yet, and that they weren't allowed to get a service like ours. Almost the opposite. We helped them scale and make sure to deliver a better experience to their customers. So maybe there's something I don't quite understand. Okay, so maybe go on to the next question here. So I'll read this out. Question from Tyler. When Preseem shows latency of an AP, what hops exactly is it measuring to get that number? I have an AP that shows a latency of 70 during peak hours, but a ping to the web averages 30 to 40. So I'm curious how Preseem calculates his latency measurement. Well,
Cool.
stick that one. I think
Yeah.
any of us can answer it, but
yeah. Why don't you take the start, and I'll fill in some of the TCP bits at the end.
yeah. Well, so in terms of hops, right? We measure the actual traffic flowing through our appliance, or whether it's our appliance or third-party server, but we're constantly measuring from the inline device all the way downstream, so tower, backhaul, access point, CPE, right into the home to end user Wi-Fi, like a phone, laptop, whatever. It sends back an ACK that comes back to us. So we're constantly measuring that whole path, and then we aggregate. So any one latency sample is from the inline device to the end user device. But then we aggregate subscribers per access point and access points per tower. So when you see an AP latency, that is the average sort of peak of all, well, 80th percentile, I think, but 80th percentile peak latency of all the subscribers on that AP. And the reason that's so helpful is you need to look for patterns. If all your subscribers have an elevated latency, then you know the bottleneck is a common one, like your access point in many cases. If you see that one or two are much higher, that isn't your network. In that case, it would be an individual problem with that subscriber, whether it's poor RF signal between the AP and the CPE, or in-home Wi-Fi, for example. And if you ever need more training on this, we're always happy to jump on a call and sort of walk you through your network and analyze it for you.
And maybe that last part of the question of the 70 versus the 30 to 40, that comes down to we're measuring something a little bit different than just ICMP latency, right? Like we're measuring how long it takes for TCP sequence numbers essentially to go past, get ACKed by the stack, and come back again. So it's completely normal that those numbers are slightly different than a ping, but they correlate very well. So again, like if that inline TCP based latency is going up, you still have a problem, but you may see a lower number from just an ICMP ping, but you'll see it going up at the same time. So yeah, don't treat those as directly comparable. Treat them as two different ways of measuring latency that correlate very well under load.
Yeah, and ping has, again, a very different perspectives, right? But yeah, we always measure the actual customer traffic. So sometimes ping gets prioritized more highly, sometimes lower. But else you'll always see what your actual customers are experiencing, which is kind of neat about that. All right, so the next question from Brandon. Does Cake have benefits over FQCoddle? If so, do you plan on implementing it into Preseem?
Yeah, so there is some neat things in Cake. So the history there, FQCoddle came out, Cake adds a couple of extra neat things on top of that. I think that the reality, though, is 95% of the problem gets solved by FQCoddle. Another 1% gets solved maybe by some of the optimizations in Cake, and then you're left with like the last 3 or 4%. Of course, I'm making those numbers up a little bit, but there's not a dramatic difference. But there is a couple of interesting things there. There's a kind of a flow hash, which in theory can have slightly less flow collisions. We solve that by just making the number of flow buckets much bigger than the default. And there's a couple of interesting things there they do the DSCP side as well that could be useful in the future. I think that they're not always useful though, because most applications don't mark their packets, with appropriate DSCP values. There's a couple things that are default in Cake that I do not think belong in a service provider at all. You can turn them off, but things like the ACK compression, I generally don't think a service provider should be mucking with that. That's different though than your home gateway. That's really where Cake was designed to be, right in the home network. In terms of are we ever going to switch to it, we're actually building something new that is not, there's some interesting ideas coming from there, some of our own ideas, but we're not able to achieve the rates we want to achieve with either FQCoddle or Cake, and we're doing our own thing. So can't put dates on that yet, but that will have some of the benefits and differences in Cake, and some additional things as well.
Awesome, thanks, Dan. Next question is from Blair. When will there be an API? So that's going to be a multi-part question because we already have an API. Scott can talk about what's in there now. Maybe the other question you want to type in is what specifically are you looking for that you'd like to see in an API, but maybe Scott, you can talk about what you can currently do with it.
Yeah, so we have an API today for some functionalities. So for example, all the subscriber information in Preseem, there's an API to get that in and out of Preseem. Whether it's whether it's something that you input through an API, or whether it's something we're extracting from billing systems or from custom integrations. So we have that API. We also have some data APIs that are based around customer usage. So we have ones to get bulk usage out if you want to use that for any reporting you do, and we have one that's per customer usage. If you have a web portal where you show charts of in-out bytes for customers, you may be asking about APIs for some of our RF scores and some of our newer functionality. We do not have an API for that yet, and the reason for that is just we try to order things where we're really bringing as much value as we can to the market as quickly as possible, and being able to integrate that to other systems is kind of a secondary thing. So we do plan on having an API for that. I can't put a date on it, but it's not the top thing we're working on right now. But and as Gerrit said, like, please provide us with some feedback of what you're looking for and what the use cases are, and that'll help us make sure it gets the right priority.
Yeah, it maybe just in terms of all the raw metrics, we have a lot of raw metrics, like billions and billions a day. So exposing some of the summary metrics, I think, is something we'd like to do from the API, but the raw stuff is almost not practical to move it out of our platform. It's so big.
How many samples a day are we up to, Dan?
It's billions. I haven't even looked.
I know it's a lot of zeros.
It was billions years ago, and I haven't even looked in ages. So
yeah, nice. So the follow-up from Blair was, I was thinking of a notification using the API. Can you expand a little bit more on that? Like what?
Like if you're looking for something like webhooks for us to call out based on different triggers like that, that's not something we've done so far. Certainly something we could do in the future.
Yeah. If you have a particularly idea on something you'd like us to do, maybe it's a little too much to discuss here, but happy to jump on the phone with you and just kind of see what your suggestions are. Feedback is always awesome. Different workflows you're trying to solve, that kind of thing. One thing we're really finding with as Preseem has kind of evolved in the early days, it was shaping and monitoring and measuring latency, and now we have all these RF scores and all kinds of cool stuff. And what we're really just realizing is it's no longer one or two people that are customers that are using Preseem, that are setting it up and doing some troubleshooting with it. We recently, one of our customers asked if we could do a bulk import of all their users into Preseem. And we're like, yeah, no problem. We can help you with that. Just send us a spreadsheet. It's 120 people. Now, it's one of our larger customers, but it was 120 people that were going to be using Preseem on a regular basis that he wanted to track, use the statistics of and everything else, which he can do behind the scenes a little bit. And so it's really a matter of, it's not just this core kind of geeky network group that's using Preseem. It is your sales team, your support team. It's the execs look at patterns and trends, and there's all kinds of stuff like that. So any sort of ideas you have to further help with that, we're always interested in learning more about. Cool. Okay. Next question is from Spencer. I heard that Wave APs lost Preseem integration when Ubiquiti pushed an update that broke with the web scraper. SSH scraper coming soon, TM. Any updates you know of? And I'm going to read the last part out loud too. Thanks, guys. You're all awesome. Thank you.
I'll probably take that one.
Yeah.
So Ubiquiti is always lots of fun. So I'll give a bit of background. So we have our network poller that polls devices, usually using SNMP, but sometimes we can't get everything we need by SNMP, especially with some vendors. So Ubiquiti doesn't have the greatest SNMP support. They don't expose everything, and sometimes things they do expose are not true, and the web interface is more correct. So for Ubiquiti, to get the performance metrics that we need to do some of the scoring, especially, we need to pull the web. And the second thing we need from Ubiquiti, in some cases, depending on the deployment, is to be able to pull the bridge tables if we're trying to do that network-based mapping using the bridge tables. So Wave AP was working just fine, no problems at all. And then they came along with a minor release, the 3.10 release, and then it was complete rewrite basically of their GUI and the APIs behind it. So that broke it. It broke our support for it. So it broke it in two ways. One is easier to fix than the other. So it broke our basic ability to do more performance metrics than SNMP provides. So that one's not too bad. We're working on a fix for that, and we'll have that next month sometime. That'll be out. The larger problem is that Ubiquiti completely took the ability to list the bridge table out of their web interface. Like you can't, there's no way to get the bridge tables out of it anymore. You'll notice if you log into it and browse around, like unlike most Ubiquities, you can't display the bridge table and figure out which Macs are behind your stations. So I don't know if that's coming back or why Ubiquiti did that. If anyone knows, I'd be interested to learn more. But the only way to get the bridge tables that we've been able to figure out is that SSH, to go in via SSH and just get it right out of there. So we are going to be working on a solution for that. That one's probably going to take a bit longer. It's probably going to take, I would guess, 2-3 months before we have a solution to that.
And of course, we're always trying our best to make things as turnkey as possible. We learned very early on that being able to map subscribers to access points to tower in an automated way is the only way to keep all of the stuff accurate. So this is high priority stuff for us always. All right, next question. I have an AP which is a 450M Cambium, so Medusa 3 gigahertz radio. We just have 8 customers on that AP, and Preseem says we are overloaded if you get more than 5. How is this possible? The warning says low available subscriber capacity, warning 5.
So we'd probably need to look at this individually to answer this question. So we'll throw out some possibilities, but the reality is it's going to be different for every situation. Offhand, it is possible or maybe likely that there is a few heavy subscribers with very poor modulation. That would be my first guess, because ultimately what's happening there is we're looking at, and Jeremy's the guy to talk about this in a whole bunch of detail, but we're looking at usage combined with modulation information, combined with which subscribers are active when, and using that to determine if there's enough capacity to meet a given subscriber demand. And modulations have a huge impact. So I would guess that there's some very poor RF scores and some very poor business value scores on that AP. It's possible there's something else is going on as well, but that might be something, if you have another tab open, just start a chat with support team, tell them that we're talking right now, and one of us will take it or someone else and go look at it and see if we can make some recommendations for that particular AP. But poor RF will dramatically change how many subscribers you can put on an AP.
Yeah. The other thing to look at, if you click on the AP and look at the overview page, there's connected stations and then there's subscriber capacities. So it sounds like your subscriber capacity is saying there's fewer than a handful left. That's a warning. So you're getting close to its limit there. On the CPE on the CPEs connected, you'll see as well a color code there. On a Medusa, I'd be surprised if it was only like 10 or 12. Like if you're like in the blue and it looks like there's a lot to go still, that means that your AP, in theory, can handle a lot more CPEs, but in your particular case, as Dan was getting at, noise, poor modulation, that kind of thing makes it a lot worse. If the RF score is 6, so that's quite good. The CPE number, the CPE connected, does it say it's in the blue or close to yellow? Because I would expect for Medusa to see, unless you have like a 10 megahertz channel width, that would make it worse too. I don't know if I want to fully troubleshoot this whole thing. I'm happy to spend a minute or two on it. But I think in general, you want to look at CP connections. What does the gauge say there? That's sort of for an optimal AP like that, right? Of that configuration, that channel width, that up-down ratio, all kinds of stuff like that. And then if that's already pretty full, you're just kind of getting close to load. Like you're not going to be able to make it much better. If you still got a ways to go there and the subscriber capacity shows there's not many left to add, then look at all the diagnostics. Does it say interference detected, something like that? That's obvious. And then go to the connections table and look for the CPs with poor business value scores. And it's the ones with a poor business value score that's a combination of typically worse RF and heavier usage that are killing all your airtime. On a Medusa, especially, if you have 1 or 2 of those, it's going to force it back into single MIMO mode instead of MU-MIMO. And so it can make a really big difference there. But again, I'm speculating a little bit here, right? So I would say if you ask this question, in the inline and the app that we have, the little blue circle at the bottom right, I'm happy to dig into that further with you and see specifically what's going on.
Yeah, anytime you see anything that's out of the ordinary, we don't mind looking into that a little bit. Maybe sometimes we can learn how we can communicate problems better than we are now if it's not obviously not clear in this case. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, let's see the next question. In my usage in my team's help desk, so far I have noticed that the downstream and upstream bandwidth usage is higher in the RF transfer rate versus the port transfer rate. I have primarily seen this on MikroTik. What could cause this? So those metrics come directly. Oh, no. Downstream and upstream is probably measured from the inline device. And the RF transfer rate, I'm just trying to see. There's two different metrics, right? There's the ones you measure from the inline device. So that's going to be your upstream and downstream overall bandwidth. And then RF transfer rate and port transfer rate we get directly from the devices. So that's sort of, you should see the same thing when you log into the device there. One thing you can see sometimes, if you see a downstream in the inline that we measure is higher than what you get from the actual device, one thing that we're doing is we measure the downstream bandwidth before our shapers. So usually they're pretty close because it's not like you get 20 megs coming in, the shaper set for 10 and only lets, and it lets 10 out. Usually that, TCP backs off and the client slows down and everything else. But there are cases where you get a burst of traffic that gets shaped. So it looks like there's way more bandwidth than there actually is. It'll never go bigger than the shaper. So that could be a problem here as well.
It's also possible there's a mapping problem. Like if there's subscribers being associated with that AP that actually aren't on that AP. Yeah. So but again, probably a support issue.
Yeah, it's hard to tell whether we're interpreting the question correctly. It's really the kind of thing like we'd like to see. So if you could just submit a support request for that, somebody will take a look at that.
Yeah, we're always happy to help interpret data. I personally spend quite a bit of time just going through networks, showing off fun parts and issues that we found and stuff like that. So we're always happy to do that. All right, next question. We lost latency graphing yesterday, but download and upload rates are still being graphed. Do you know why this might be?
No. Once I saw your question, I quickly logged into a couple and did a sanity check to make sure there was no big problems. So whatever's happening there appears to be specific to your deployment.
So you might try refreshing your web browser. We did make one change a few days ago that would possibly cause that symptom if you've had a very long-lived web session to our web app.
Yeah. If it isn't something like that, this is maybe a little out there, but it's possible if you have asymmetry in your network. Let's say you have multiple devices and normally the up and down goes through one the way it's supposed to. If you change to downstream goes through one and upstream goes to the other, then we couldn't measure latency either. That's something else. It could be something like that. Again, I'm speculating a bit here what the possibilities are. Good questions.
It's good. Very, very tactical. I feel like we should do this more often.
Yeah. We've considered doing a weekly, dig into data session or something like that and make it a bit more public. But somebody would have to volunteer their network as well to do that on. But we spent quite a bit of time not just building this stuff, but interpreting it, make sure everything makes sense, that it makes sense to our customers and whatnot as well. All right, any other burning questions?
Or not burning.
Or not burning. Anything you want to know about us, the company, the product? Dan, what's your favorite feature on our roadmap coming up soon that we can talk about?
So I talked a little bit in the QoE session, or on, I guess, geez, that was only yesterday. It feels like a while ago, about the AP congestion management stuff that we're doing. So basically leveraging our data pool, like for anybody, hopefully people on the call, you've looked at our fixed wireless report and see that we have a lot of data about the real world performance of these APs. Probably more than most of the vendors actually, which is really kind of interesting. And we're now using that to determine, based on the kind of performance model of the AP, the RF conditions of the AP, the CP radio, how much bandwidth those APs can handle and still deliver a good experience. And then we're using that to drive the AP shapers that we've had for a long time, which were manual before. So this is running on hundreds of APs today. We're not quite ready to release it yet, but we'll definitely be talking about it and showing it more at the show at WISP America in a couple of weeks. So that's the closest thing and probably the most exciting thing. We've seen some really good results with that actually. It's kind of neat. It kind of flexes up and down based on the RF conditions. So if you improve a subscriber, it kind of widens things up over time and then shrinks it down. We're not trying to solve like short-term, I don't know, like a storm comes through and interference is bad for 5 minutes. Like that's not what this is trying to solve. It's trying to solve like long-term, customer usage is growing. You just don't want to have the quality of experience get bad. So yeah, that's pretty neat stuff. And again, not too far out now on that one.
Yeah, I've had some good conversations with customers as well, and there's a fair bit of excitement building for this, so we're keen on it. The next one here, do pineapples belong on pizza? I say yes. Scott, Dan?
I mean, is this too political for?
I don't know.
I'm a yes on pineapple on pizza, although I like it without also.
I think I would have said no a while ago, but it's growing on me.
It's probably the kid's fault. Cool. All right, the next one from Tyler. My understanding is that Preseem can rate shape IPv6. Yes, it can. Have you had any customers successfully implement anything with Sonar as their building platform? I believe we have, but maybe Scott, do you want to talk about that one a bit?
Yeah, so yeah, we fully support IPv6 for rate shaping. Yes, we have Sonar customers using it. And I guess one thing I can expand on there a bit is even billing systems that don't support IPv6, we can help out with that. So what we can do is, if you're using dual stack and you've only got v4 in the billing system, our network puller can pull the routers and read the routing table for IPv6 and correlate that together. So we're actually shaping the v6 and v4 address in the same shaper, even though only the v4 address may be in your billing system.
Okay.
One thing that was maybe a little
as well.
Yeah, a little surprising there is we did spend a few years ago a lot of time on IPv6, and the adoption has still been quite modest. So it's good. We needed it. It's I had to have it, but I don't even know what percentage of our customers have IPv6 right now, but it is just not a majority. I'm pretty sure on that.
We definitely got asked a lot. It was one of those. It's kind of, if you don't have it, we can't proceed with you, and then they don't use it for years after that. But yeah, we've had it for quite some time now, and it's a good thing, obviously. All right. Question from Brandon. I think I know which Brandon is this actually. Are you all planning on offering 3rd-gen Epic appliances?
I think it'll be interesting to see if the next gen appliances turn out to be Intel's new stuff or turn out to be AMD. And I don't think we know the answer to that yet. Certainly the new, like all the Sapphire Rapids and the ones that's coming after that, it looks like Intel's finally catching up and maybe surpassing. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, but nothing short term there.
Yeah. But yeah, with the software updates that we're working on, you'll see quite a bit more performance out of our existing gear. And then we're always looking for the next thing, of course, too. So yeah, whether that's Sapphire or AMD, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. Question from Eden. What version of the Ubiquity software caused a problem? Should we back off that update? I guess that's a reference back to the previous Wave question.
Yeah. So hi, Eden. That was specific to Wave AP. So the 60 gig Ubiquity, and that was version 3.10. And should we back up the update? It probably depends how sort of mission critical our interaction with the bridge tables that are. So if you're relying on our bridge table extraction to make the subscriber mapping work, then yeah, it might be worth a downgrade. Otherwise, I'd probably just wait for us to provide support.
And if you have any kind of channel towards Ubiquity, by all means, raise it with them.
Yeah.
The more the merrier.
Haven't seen them at this conference, so surprise.
Yeah. I'm sure if enough people complain, they might do something about it. Ubiquity has many strengths. That unfortunately is not one of them.
It's another 6 minutes or so to kill at least.
Yeah.
What else do we want to talk about?
Well, we can talk about industry trends. What do we see? Maybe high level from our fixed wireless support or even our customers and things like that. We're kind of a unique position, right? Because all of you know your business really well, of course, right? But we see many of them, and growth rates and different technology adoption and access point vendors and things like that.
I think probably the obvious thing there is to talk about fiber and multi-access networks. So we had a good session. If you weren't able to make it yesterday, with Adair and Adair Winter from Amarillo and Jason Pond. And we were talking about this, like, what is the future? And there's a good discussion. People are asking questions like, can fixed wireless only providers survive? And there's so much stuff going on there with all of the federal funds to do fiber build outs. And I think the reality is many networks, or all networks, are going to end up to be multi-access on some level, which is why doing some stuff in that area is a focus for us as well, of course, and even more so going forward. So that's probably the big thing, right? Like, what does it mean now that there's billions of dollars flowing into fiber networks? And what does it mean to fixed wireless? What does it mean to the larger local and regional providers as a whole? And I think it's going to be a multi-access world. To what percent is going to be very dependent on the individual providers and the terrain that they service.
Yeah. The other thing I'm seeing a lot from sort of on the account side is M&A. It feels like at least monthly, if not weekly, one of our customers is either buying somebody else or got bought by something, and networks are combining. That is a very, very active trend right now, and I expect will be for some time still. We can see their customers growing, the subscriber counts keep going up, and things like that. So the industry is quite healthy in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think the growth rate is slowing a little bit versus during the COVID years, but still, as an industry as a whole, seems quite robust from where we're sitting as well.
Mm-hmm. Maybe in the fixed wireless specific front, it's interesting to see what's like. We talk about Ubiquiti and Cambium. Obviously, based on our fixed wireless report, they're by far the dominant. But there's other vendors there as well, and of course, Toronto's starting to get some market share now, and you see Radwin and Telrad and a bunch of others. But it'll be interesting to see how that mix plays out over the next while too, especially if there's more dollars flowing towards building fiber networks and kind of who comes out on top there. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing actually, maybe on the wireless side, is I've seen a few people very excited about 60 gigahertz, and then most other people not even mentioning it. And I'm not quite sure what to make of that yet. So I don't know if that is just like a trend in very particular geographies and like particular circumstances, and then those people are hyper excited. Yeah, exactly. And everyone else just doesn't care. That's probably what it is. But it's interesting because it's, again, a few customers very interested, and then other people don't even mention it. So,
another question popped up there. Do you support Baycell's APs? Yes, we do. Generally, it's no different than anything else. The shaping works the same way. The benefits of the optimization techniques are the same for LTE versus Wi-Fi, Cambium, Ubiquiti, whatnot. Really, with LTE in general, the best way to do it, if you can, is to set the plan speed in Preseem, get all the benefits from the active queue management, FQ coddle, make sure it doesn't feel slow when you max it out. And then if you want to set a speed in your core as well in Baycell that's a little bit higher than that, it can use that for resource allocation. If you get both of those in place, you get the best of both worlds. We can map out subscribers to the eNode Bs automatically as well. We just need a connection to your Baycell's Cloud Core account. Did I miss anything there, Scott?
No, I think that covers it.
Yeah, and in general, I don't want to say we support everything, but if it's at all common in this space, we either have support for it or we can make something work.
There is a level there as well on top of, like, we can support it for shaping and QoE measurement. The scores that we built, the support there is a little bit more restrictive. We're still fleshing that out. It covers over 90% of the APs that we see in our customer base right now, but there is a bit of a long tail that we do not have the score support for yet.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. That is maybe one, I didn't know exactly what the question was about, but yes, the RF score we don't have yet, but that is definitely on the roadmap. I think, Scott, we've got Radwin coming out next.
Radwin's next. We'll be working on Tirana after that, likely Telrad after that.
Yeah, and dip our toes into the LTE side of it, where everything is standard, and once we do one of them, it should be the same for all of them, right? We'll see how that works out.
Yeah, that's the dream. It's not the reality.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'll give it 30 more seconds for more questions, but I think that's slowing down a little bit. Love the questions. So thank you so much for all that. Again, we hadn't done this before, so we love the interaction like this. All right, I guess I'll read that one out loud. But you guys are perfect. Thank you so much. I don't know we're perfect, but appreciate it nonetheless. Thank you. We really do love. I think you can tell from us, right? But we love doing this. This is just, yeah. I have fun almost every day. So, yeah.
For anybody going to the show, please stop by and say hi in a couple weeks. I will probably be sending out an email with some. I think we're still planning to do an event on the Monday, kind of like the one we did at Wispapalooza, just a little bit of an ad hoc kind of thing. But of course, we'll be around the booth and speaking at and attending various sessions and stuff all week. So always very happy to sit down and talk to anybody about any of these problems or where they see things are going or what other problems we can solve for them.
Yep. Yeah, Wisp America, and then I think it's Can Wisp after that. Wispapalooza, of course, but that's out of way still. So.
Yeah, Wisp America is what, 2.5 weeks away now?
Yep.
Yeah. That's fast.
Yeah, we're going to be driving to this one. It's be a nice road trip.
Fingers crossed for good weather.
Yeah. All right. I think we'll probably call it a day here. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining, listening in, and all your questions. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.